I was greatly shocked the first time I received corporal punishment at grammar school, for I had not expected it to be so painful. On that occasion, I received only 2 strokes. At junior school, I had twice been punished with the slipper by a female teacher, though these were little more than symbolic chastisements and caused very little discomfort. More severe was an earlier punishment administered by a male teacher who lined up approximately 6 boys and gave each of us a firm spanking of some 10 strokes. Even so, it did not compare with the severity of the slipper. At my school, almost all slipper punishments were administered by members of the physical education staff, and invariably the boy concerned wore only thin gymnasium shorts. I witnessed many such punishments, and it is fair to say that the masters delivered the strokes with considerable force. After only 1 or 2 strokes, the recipient's buttocks would often bear dark red or purple marks in the shape of the plimsoll sole. The usual punishment ranged from 1 to 3 strokes, though on rare occasions I heard of boys receiving as many as 6. I myself received the slipper several times and found it considerably more painful than the cane. This may have been because the punishment was delivered across light physical education clothing by young and athletic masters, and because a slipper could be swung with full force while still striking accurately. The cane, by contrast, generally required greater restraint for accuracy. One of my most painful experiences occurred during my 3rd year at the boys' grammar school I attended in the early 1960s. During a physical education lesson, we had been instructed to change for games and proceed to the gymnasium for floor exercises. The previous class had neglected to put away several footballs and, in a moment of foolishness, I kicked one of them forcefully across the hall. At that very moment, the master entered and observed the ball travelling through the air. I readily admit that it was both irresponsible and dangerous, for had the ball struck another boy, it might have caused serious injury. The master, uncertain who was responsible, demanded that the culprit identify himself. I therefore admitted my conduct immediately. After rebuking me briefly, the master informed me that I would be punished, although he did not at first specify the nature of the punishment. When he left the gymnasium, however, it became obvious what was to follow. From previous experience, I knew he intended to fetch the slipper, a size 11 rubber-soled plimsoll, and administer punishment accordingly. I recall feeling both anger at my own foolishness and dread at what lay ahead. I had previously experienced the slipper and knew well how painful it could be. At our school, it was feared considerably more than the cane. For what seemed several minutes, I stood before my classmates, awaiting the master's return. When he entered carrying the plimsoll, he addressed the class and explained that my behaviour had been reckless and dangerous, and that severe punishment was justified. I hoped that I might receive only 2 strokes, but I was informed that the offence warranted 3. Even a single stroke from the plimsoll could leave a deep red welt and considerable bruising, so the prospect of 3 filled me with apprehension. I was instructed to come to the front of the class and bend over. The gymnasium fell entirely silent, for the other boys understood well the severity of such punishments, and generally regarded them with sympathy rather than amusement. I obeyed, bending forward with my hands upon my knees. The master instructed me to lower myself further, so that my shorts were stretched tightly across me. My back was turned towards the class, who would inevitably witness the effects of the punishment. After a few moments, I felt 2 light taps upon the centre of my buttocks, followed immediately by an extraordinarily forceful blow. The crack of the plimsoll echoed throughout the gymnasium like the report of a firearm, and the pain caused me involuntarily to step forward. Nevertheless, I knew better than to rise from my position, and therefore resumed it immediately. After another short pause came the second stroke, landing upon almost precisely the same place as the first. The pain was intense, and I believe I cried out involuntarily. Yet I remained in position, fully aware that the third and final stroke would follow at once. I braced myself as best I could. Again came the warning taps, followed by another resounding crack as the plimsoll struck home for the last time. 3 strokes delivered in the same place left me, at 13 years of age, in severe discomfort and deeply chastened. Upon straightening up my hands, instinctively moved to the injured area. At least I was excused from the remainder of the lesson and instructed to change and wait in the changing room until the class had concluded. I left the gymnasium feeling thoroughly miserable and still suffering considerable pain. Upon reaching the changing room, I examined the effects of the punishment and found a pronounced welt across my buttocks in the shape of the plimsoll sole, by then turning from red to bluish in colour. Though I did not cry, my eyes watered considerably and I felt acutely humiliated. When the lesson ended, the remainder of the class returned to the changing room. There was little mockery and a good deal of sympathy, though naturally several boys wished to inspect the marks. I reluctantly obliged, and many expressed astonishment at the severity of the bruising, though 1 or 2 remarked that I had deserved the punishment. The marks remained visible for more than a week, and I was still sore the following day. Did I deserve such punishment? Regrettably, I must concede that my behaviour had indeed been dangerous. Had the football struck another boy upon the head, the consequences might have been very serious. At least the injuries I sustained were temporary and in time healed completely.